Welcome back to the MDM podcast, where we explore the trends, strategies, and people shaping the future of distribution. I'm Vesna Brajkovic and your host for today's episode. Today, I'm excited to bring on two guests from a third-generation family-owned industrial distribution business. We're going to dive into a few different topics today. One, the dynamics of a family-owned business. And for those listening, whether you're a family-owned business or not, you'll probably get something out of this discussion because we're all navigating really the same things: succession planning, decision-making among leadership, and bringing in that next generation. And then two, the balancing act of distribution, which is maintaining your core business and the core values that made it successful in the first place, while also continuing to transform and grow your business. So we're joined here today by two generations of leadership at New Jersey-based industrial distributor A&M Industrial. We have David Young, A&M's president. Hi, David. Thanks for joining us.
How are you, Vesna?
Great. Thank you. And his son, Josh Young, who serves as the chief operations officer.
Hi, Vesna.
Great to have you. So there's a lot to talk about. I mean, this is a 70-year-old business. So some context for the listeners. It started as a small hardware store in Newark and has expanded remarkably across the East Coast. And they've built really a reputation for this response and aid to crisis, such as 9/11 and Hurricane Sandy. And recently, they were named a Family Business of the Year by a business journal in New Jersey. And now they've recently expanded into robotics and automation. So there's a rich story here, and I think there's a lot of places that we could start, but I really want to start with the fact that Josh left what I assume is a pretty good career in investment banking at JP Morgan to rejoin his family distribution business. And so, I mean, talk about succession planning and bringing in that next generation and making people excited about this opportunity that's in the industry. I would love to hear, Josh, what was it about A&M Industrial that finally drew you to leave, an established career and rejoin a family business and rejoin distribution? And was it always the plan?
Yeah, thanks, Vesna. So I grew up working at A&M from a young age, but it was really important to me to do my own thing for a bit first. I thought, I could come back into the family business, but I wanted to try things for myself first. So as you mentioned, I worked for JP Morgan for about 7 or 8 years coming out of school. And honestly, it was a great experience working there. Learned a ton of stuff, worked with a lot of great people. And I did like what I did, but I was focused on a very narrow set of things. And I wasn't always in control over my time in my day and how I was focusing my time. So my grandfather started an awesome business back in 1954, which my father has worked in for about 40 years now. A&M really presented an opportunity for me to get more holistic with my view across business. I've always liked operations. I've always liked finance. I've always liked technology. And working with my dad, who I have a great relationship with, really would give me an opportunity to do all of those things. And I think alongside that, I think there's a lot of great opportunity in the industry today. There aren't, a lot of young people coming into the industry, and I actually see that as a positive thing because it's a fantastic industry. The opportunity for me has been incredible so far. This March will be 4 years, and I'm looking forward to a long career at A&M.
Nice. And yeah, so we really looked into this topic at MDM, and we recently surveyed in summer of 2024 nearly 130 family-owned distributors like yourselves, and we found that about 31% said that they were very confident in their succession plans covering key positions. So 31%, that's not a small number. So there seems to be a broad confidence, but that also leaves many businesses in that demographic with this gap in leadership succession, which some say, like you mentioned, may become larger as in up-and-coming generations show just general more independence in career choices than previous generations and maybe lack of interest in the industry. So I want to turn it over to David on that point. I would love to know, what is your outlook on succession and taking over the business? Because you took over the business from your father and now Josh is coming in for the next generation. So what are your thoughts on that?
I also grew up in our business. I used to love, when my dad came home, and we'd sit around the dinner table and he'd share stories about what was going on in and around the company. And I knew from a very young age, I felt and he said, David, you can go out and do whatever you want. You always have this option to come into the business. But I knew I was destined to really do that. And, I never appreciated from my dad's perspective how wonderful it is to have that next generation come into the business until my son did, 4 years ago. And have that, to have, that family leadership and that legacy that you can leave the business to just is such a wonderful experience. So I think it's great that we've made it to a third generation. A lot of companies in our industry actually go back, 5 and 6 generations, which is just incredible, both on the manufacturer side as well as on the distribution side. And I think it's also healthy, Vesna, for that next generation of leadership to come in because, they grew up in a different era. When I joined our business, we were manual. We were handwriting work orders and invoices. We had no live inventory system. So this was back in the 80s when personal computers, were first coming online. So my task, was to computerize our company, and I did that. But over the years, I've been with the business for 40 years. You kind of are not always able to stay on top of the latest technology, and having Josh come into the business and all of the technological projects and innovation that he's brought, that he grew up with, really enhances our company.
And I really want to go back to the influences from the outside world, Josh, and things like that. But I just want to stop here and ask about your structure for decision making between you two and other executive leaderships, especially when you might see things differently. So I would love maybe an example of how you two have worked together on a strategic decision.
So we work very collaboratively, and I typically like to take time, to make thoughtful decisions. So when Josh came into the company, he had a tremendous amount of ideas on what we can do. He studied operations management, so he really focused on the operations part of the business and the financial part of the business. And it was a lot of change that I felt might be a little too aggressive, for the family culture that we had. So that would be an example of one of the things that we worked through. How do we implement change? How do we, get, that next level of innovation and technology in the company, without really rattling our team and our staff. So we took a lot of care in how we approached that. I think that would be one of the best examples I have.
And then, so Josh, just thinking about the influences that you took from not being in distribution and bringing it in, what was the biggest thing that you think has shaped your strategies at A&M?
Yeah, so interesting question, Vesna. So it's funny, when I was with the bank, I was considered one of the more technical people in the organization, which would be defined as aptitude for financial modeling and Excel work. And I came over to A&M and I realized I was quickly the least technical person because product is what makes you technical in this industry. But interestingly, there's a lot more synergies I've found in my experience at JP Morgan that I have been able to carry over for A&M. I was really able to hone in on my communication skills, presentation skills, team building skills, and it's definitely been helpful here at the organization. And I think it's made a pretty big impact. While I was at the bank, I had a lot of focus on financial related matters and even real estate as well, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later. So, some of my foundation at JP Morgan has helped me in that arena as well.
That's great. And I know, so A&M had launched an automation division in 2022, led by you, Josh. And so can you walk through that decision in the company to launch that into robotics and manufacturing tech and that kind of market, and why that market, why now, and maybe some specific market opportunities that you were targeting with that?
I'll tell you, even before Josh starts, if I could just, give a brief intro. Even before Josh joined the company, I remember, him saying, "Dad, you need more innovative products." And I said, "Yeah, Josh, like, what do you have in mind?" And he said, "Robots." And I said, "Wow, we don't know anything about robots." But we put together on his advice, I put together a team of people to go out and study this. And I think through his work at the bank and investing in a lot of large distribution companies, they they realized how important automation and robotics is in industry today. So by the time Josh got here, we had a lot of cogent knowledge and information, and then he was able to take the lead on this.
Yeah, and I'll just add from my perspective, I always think about what is the role of the distributor in the market, right? There's a value add that they need to play for the manufacturer and a value add that they need to play for the end user. And as I think about the types of products at A&M that we should sell and should look to sell into the future, we'll always sell commodities because people need commodities. But I think what really differentiates us is the value add and service oriented nature with which we sell. So robotics, for example, going back a couple of years ago, it's improved a little bit, but there was significant labor shortages. I mean, I noticed a trend towards automation to help fix, that shortage issue and improve operation flow and output. So it's up to us, as a distributor to bring the latest innovation to our end users so they stay relevant and continue to grow because we view them as partners and we want to grow with them together. So it seemed like a really blossoming and emerging space for us to be at where we could roll up our sleeves, try something a little bit new. And it was also quite complementary to our existing offerings because if you look at our customers, they use and they need robotics, and some of them knew they needed it and some of them didn't know they needed it. So we educated ourselves. We signed on some awesome robotic lines who we're partnered with, and we're able to bring that out to our customer base, which has been very exciting.
David, when you were researching this market, was it their customer demand for it, or did you kind of see the demand before it was there, or when did it start kind of picking up?
I don't know that we had any live, leads or targets at that point.
Yeah.
But we knew that this technology was in its infancy and would probably roll out, over the course of the next decade. Some of the larger companies, certainly Amazons and so forth, UPS were already investing in this technology, in robotics and automation. And we felt that it would, trickle down to industrial manufacturing and smaller distribution companies like us. So we felt there was a long-term runway there.
And how has the expansion performed against your those initial expectations?
So far, we've had some pretty good success. Some of the companies that we work with are international. We're looking for a presence in the U.S. market. So we have identified, a bunch of companies. It's actually given us they've given us a pretty wide runway. In that, A&M traditionally, has been a regional, distribution company in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. But this has really given us an opportunity to pursue, leads and targets throughout the U.S. And we've done that. We've sold and did installations as far away as Alaska.
Oh, wow.
To some right here in the Garden State.
So what's the secret, David, to entering new markets while maintaining your core business and those foundational strengths that has really built the company and kept those customers?
One of the things I learned from my dad, he never said no. When a customer came to him with a problem or a need, he would go out and find the solution and source that material. And as a result, we've built up over the course of 70 years a very broad product offering. It amazes me sometimes when I sit down at night at the computer and look at the types of things that we're selling. It's such a wide, diverse, market. And it's, I think, very consistent with our industry. Industrial mill supply companies are typically catch-alls. And when a customer, has a problem and doesn't know where to go, they turn to companies like us to solve it. When we talk about, expansion and acquisitions, making, some strategic acquisitions, we've typically focused on companies, in very narrow part of the marketplace. Maybe it's a company in the safety space or in the metalworking space. We certainly look for synergies, but one of the first things that we do is explore ways that we can broaden, the product offering that we can bring to their customer base, by the very nature of A&M's roots.
And I really want to talk about your roots and also maintaining those values and what your values are while scaling the business. So I just thought it was interesting because one of the initiatives that has really built A&M's reputation, I think, is this history of crisis response. And so I was reading about, like I mentioned, 9/11, Hurricane Sandy, and other ways that your business has kind of stepped up. So I would love for you to share one impactful story. And I say one because I know you probably have a million. So maybe one or two impactful stories that you think can illustrate how your business has really served the country in a time of need. I think our audience would love to hear something like that.
When I look back at my 40-year career at A&M, the most memorable and impactful times have been times when the company rose up, in the face of a crisis or an emergency. And you mentioned some of them, during 9/11, when the World Trade Center was bombed and collapsed. We were involved because of our proximity to New York City and our customer base. We were involved in that restoration. During Superstorm Sandy, we helped a lot of New Jersey companies clean up, from the flooding and help some of the utilities get the power grid, back online. But one of the most recent examples, I think, was during the pandemic. We were fortunate in that we were sitting on a fairly large inventory of personal protective equipment, N95 masks, and we thought we'd be well situated, to support our customer base early on. And New Jersey and the New York City area in the spring of 2020, it was the epicenter of the pandemic. Many people here were sick. The hospitals and first responders were just overwhelmed. And we ended up donating a lot of, particularly the N95 masks, just to local hospitals, throughout the region, because the need was so great. And I think it does, speak to the family value and giving back to community that we strive to promote.
It's been so interesting. So I didn't actually cover the distribution industry during COVID, but looking back on all the ways that distributors really stepped up during the pandemic was so, I guess, refreshing, because, you always hear, distributors, are working on very small margins, and, profit is a really big part of the business. And so I think it was really encouraging to see how much the distribution industry, especially family-owned businesses, really stepped up and were there as part of the supply chain and part of a greater, relief and crisis effort. So that was very encouraging. So I wanted to mention those initiatives, as well as, well, maybe one I failed to mention, which is that A&M has a charitable foundation as well, because I think those two things can really illustrate for our listeners and give a glimpse into your values and the values you have as business owners, and as well as just people. So I wanted to ask you both really how you intend to carry on and maintain your company and your family values as you continue to scale, whether it's through things like acquisition or other market expansions. So maybe, Josh, any ideas on that front?
Yeah, I think, look, people are the most important part of the business. And if there's one thing that's important to me is, we try to treat everybody with respect and, frankly, just like family. People, need flexibility. People need different accommodations. And I think as an organization, one thing that's important to me is the people that are supporting the growth of the company. It's our responsibility to support them as well. So that's one point that's very important to me. And I know, David, definitely something that's high on your radar as well.
My dad, obviously he was my father, but he was also a father figure to many of the people, longtime employees of our company. So A&M, was always an extension of the Young family. And I've always felt that we've had, a good culture, but how do you strive, to have a great, a high performing culture? And one of the things that you really need to do is communicate. There's a lot of things that I just, understand from my background and my growing up. I just assume other people know and have those same values. But I realize as a company of over 100 associates, you need to do a good job of communicating. And every week, we do take a particular value or what we call fundamental and speak to it in a number of different ways, to our staff, so that we understand, what the expectations are and how we should treat, one another, and how we should interact, with our supplier base and our customers, So maintaining that level of communication, I think, helps to ensure that those family values live on, as the company grows and expands.
I love that. I would love to hear what are one of the company values that are outlined.
Well, one of them, consistent with what we're just talking about is giving back. And the company has a number of initiatives. I know we don't have a lot of time to go into all of them, but we support, a lot of things. We're part of AD, and they have an AD disaster relief organization. And I just feel, with all of the storms and natural crises that affect our company, we've always been company supporters of that, foundation that Bill Weisberg established. My wife passed away a few years ago from ovarian cancer, and our family established a Monica K. Young Foundation to support research, so that we can find a cure and to ease the path of other women that are going through, this affliction. So we're very big on giving back, and that's certainly, one of the values and fundamentals that we focus on.
That's amazing. And I think looking to the future too, I'm really curious about the plans for A&M and where it's going. So I know A&M has plans to open a new headquarters and distribution center in 2026. So maybe, Josh, you can enlighten us why the new digs. What can you share about the future and some of the opportunities that A&M is looking to for growth on the East Coast into the Mid-Atlantic?
Yeah, definitely, Vesna. So it's been a really fun project working on our future headquarters. I've been working on it for at least 2 years. The pre-development process is slow, but it's been steady, which is important. We actually received preliminary approval from the town in March of this past year for our project, new headquarters, which is going to be about a 90,000 square foot building right off the New Jersey Turnpike. And then we're just working through some of the resolution compliance items now as well. We're currently actually operating in an adjacent building in that same industrial park. My personal view is that, as technology advances, we want to advance with it. And there's different advances in space as well in the real estate arena. So again, ceiling height is higher now. There's different racking systems, different automation systems that could be leveraged. So this gives us an opportunity to keep up with, the ever-changing demand in the industrial distribution space and outfit the organization with a state-of-the-art facility to continue to support our growth. And we also currently have our corporate headquarters where most of our office staff works is in Rahway, New Jersey, and our distribution center is in Cranberry. They're about 40 minutes or so from each other. So we look at this as an opportunity to potentially consolidate those two spaces down to Cranberry, which is very exciting, a variety of synergies we could unlock in doing that. So again, it's been a big part of my time at A&M, and I believe one of the things that I probably didn't mention before, one of the things that actually attracted me to A&M is David is always reinvesting in the business. And it's my belief, the same way it was his, that you have to keep investing. You can't just sit back and wait. You have to continually invest so you can stay relevant and grow. So I think this real estate project presents a really unique opportunity to kind of live with that fundamental in mind. In terms of growth, I'm very excited about the future for A&M. We're constantly exploring different geographical expansion opportunities. We're hiring, our staff. We're at a record staffing level. We continue to hire, bring new talented people on to help us grow the business. And one area in particular that I've spent quite a bit of time on with David and our CFO is in acquisitions. It was one of the things that attracted me to the industry. There is a lot of fragmentation in the industry. The younger generation isn't necessarily coming into the industry. So there's a unique opportunity today for, consolidation activities. And we've done quite a bit of that. It's been a really interesting way to grow, add resources. And in really all cases, it's been mutually beneficial activity where, we've merged in other companies to our organization. The staff, we bring on all the staff comes over, and oftentimes they say, I wish we did this sooner. This has been great. So it's been a nice way for us to expand, get new product lines, get access to new people, learn from different, geographies, opportunities and such. So I see acquisitions as a strong growth opportunity for us today and into the future.
I would love to also close with some parting words of advice from you, David, because you're the wise one on the call. No offense to myself and Josh, but Sorry, Josh, caught a stray there, but
That's okay.
what advice would you give to other distributors? And it could be someone who also has a family business, someone who doesn't have a family business and is entering distribution, or maybe is been in distribution for a long time. So what would your advice be to other distributors when it comes to balancing tradition and the core business with transformational growth? And I really want to focus on the word transformational, because not, adding a product here and there, but something that's really changing something, adding new technology, entering a new market, acquisitions, like you mentioned. So biggest piece of advice for balancing tradition with transformational growth.
I think I would probably go back to something we talked about just before, and that's communication.
Yeah.
And any company has to be innovative and has to look for ways to grow. If you're not investing in technology and innovation, you're going to become stagnant and you're going to be kind of left in the dust, because whether we like it or not, the market, our customers, our suppliers are changing all around us. So having that perspective and being willing to make those investments is important. But also being a 70-year-old company, with a lot of longtime employees, you don't want to rattle people, and you need to explain, what the changes are that are being contemplated and implemented, and make sure that people see that it enhances, not only the company as a whole, but their own personal career development and professional growth. So I think there's a way to do both, maintain, those traditional, family values that we spoke of, and yet to embrace change. And the bridge is really in communicating.
Yeah. And to me, that's the biggest takeaway from this conversation is embracing change and embracing the new generation. So this is a lot of anonymous comments we've had from our family-owned business survey. A couple of them were just that, we have people that could take on, but do I trust them to lead the business? I don't know. It's a lot of that, or maybe there's a lack of interest or things like that. So I think this idea of trust and building that and building those skills from the beginning and kind of letting go in some ways, maybe, I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think that's my biggest takeaway from you all.
It's really been a blessing, coming into the family business, and as I said, I'm just thrilled that Josh has now joined the family company as well, and I think our legacy and our future are bright, because Josh has very good business instincts, mm-hmm. and we've worked together to help and make sure he understands the dynamics of our company specifically and our industry, but I think A&M is. I feel very good in knowing that A&M is in capable hands, in this next generational shift.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, Josh and David. I really enjoyed the conversation. It was great to talk to you. So thank you so much for joining.
Thanks very much, Vesna.
Pleasure, Vesna. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the MDM podcast, brought to you by the 2025 MDM Shift Conference. If you like what you heard in this conversation, you'll hear a lot more about transformational growth, culture, and sales from other distributors at our 3-day event held May 13th through the 15th in Denver, Colorado. To register or for more information, visit mdm.com/shift2025. I hope we'll see you in Denver. Otherwise, catch you in the next one.